hoping it is educational and informational, and obviously we'll have some questions. As far as the agenda, we're going to talk about a definition of a COTS-based system first, then talk about process, people, and tools in the context of those requirements, some of the critical success factors, and then certainly a test and approach around that, a COTS-based system, and then looking at a real-life case study, because ultimately, in your world, you want to kind of apply it to not just theory, but actual things that go on out there. And then, as Michael alluded to, we're going to have a question and answer. So people ask, and sometimes it's not obvious, but what does COTS stands for? And for this discussion, we are going to define it as a commercial off-the-shelf software. But really, what does that mean? In typical environments, buying a package doesn't just mean you install it in your system. There are a number of different configurations that need to be done. There's market-driven changes that happen to that system. And frankly, some of the business requires changes constantly, so you have to constantly grow them. And with that said, you have very complex integration, meaning maybe you're implementing a system, an ERP system or a CRM system, but maybe that third-party integration isn't available. How do you go about doing that? So simply put, defining it is easy, right? It's, off the shelf, it can be packaged, configurable, but really, how do you effectively deliver it? How do you implement it? How do you deliver a high-quality solution when you frankly can be at the mercy of a package and such, and be able to focus on that? Some of the key things that go with that in our approaches is focused on a couple of three key points. First of all, process. And not just the high-level theory around what is the right types of processes, but really get into the nuts and bolts around data management strategies. What's the testing plans associated with bringing it in a package? Understanding change control. Certainly with packaged software, you're at the mercy of their release schedules. Performance and scalability. You don't necessarily have the control on the architecture, so how does your performance plans measure up at service levels for your business? The right type of people. This is really important because most of the time when people buy packages, they rely on the business to scope that out and make sure it meets their needs. But ultimately, the IT or QA group needs to handle that implementation, so having the right type of people in place. And this brings up a couple key points. Not just having manual testers go about and making sure the front ends are done properly, but talking about what is the back-end type of integration and testing needs to go with that. What are the service level requirements around performance? Working with the business analysts, making sure they understood the requirements and making sure they're testable. And then the third piece is the right types of tools. In your world, many people utilize different types of tools, and it's not just around we need to automate scripts, but understanding what the vendor did for their automation, bringing that through to your group, and then certainly the whole test management, the defect track, and how you're doing that, both as a base level system and then as a custom or configurable on top of that. And finally, the different types we talked about. I briefly mentioned test management types of tools, automation types of tools, performance tools, and how about the ability to use different types? Many people synonymous with automation think of GUI capture and playback tools, but there's different types of tools on the market and help them from an integration standpoint, or maybe it's an interface that uses web services, and that's a completely different type of testing tool. The purpose of this chart is for you to understand the complexities of the importance of integration testing. These pipes represent all the different integration points. So looking at these balls, they're all the different interfaces or applications or products. And when a change is made in the CRM system, for example, there may be a back-end billing change that's going to filter down. So the important key point here is in COTS-based systems, don't just talk about you need a good system integration test. Talk about what is required. What is required from a release management strategy that handles things like a system not being available, being delivered at different times, what does the base test systems look like, what is the data needed to set up all these different types of tests, and finally, what is the end-to-end strategy. So hopefully what you're hearing is, in a completely custom-built system, it's a little bit more, whether you're doing waterfall, agile, it doesn't matter, but it's more straightforward. You understand your releases, you understand your focus. Even that can change on a dime. But when you're doing COTS or configurable systems or package, you frankly need to understand and be integrated in their release strategies and making sure that they fold into your SDLC and how you're delivering your systems. Let's look at some of the critical success factors of a COTS-based system. And I'm going to use the word COTS and configurable as the same thing. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. These are the typical challenges, and it's not just limited to these, but for the purpose of this webinar, I want to be real clear. When you're buying a package system, let's think back to before it actually gets implemented. Oh, we can just implement this. We got these aggressive time frames. We'll drop this in. That's the high-level business kind of approach. And then the business analysts do their due diligence, and the business does it to understand really what it's going to take. So what you end up with is a very detailed types of project challenges. It's aggressive time frames. It's resource constraints. Well, the business side was supposed to help us implement this, but they're not necessarily available. It's the domain expertise, the things that go on and understand that as far as the process. In addition, you get into system challenges. You may be implementing a system, but you're going across other types of systems, maybe even across companies. You realize that it doesn't meet all your needs, so you have to do customization, or as in their world they call it configuration, but frankly that's what it's all about. And then you find out that the architecture doesn't really meet the needs from a service level standpoint, and you can get an example, working with a financial services, maybe there's fines associated to transactions not getting in time. And then the whole environment challenges from a resource perspective, in the sense of when are you releasing software, the management associated to that, the configurations associated with that, the data associated, not just from a testing standpoint, but how it all integrates together. So these are the typical challenges, and I know I left off a few, but certainly in your world, these are things you need to worry about and understand. Some of the process and tools pitfalls. When you take on a COTS system or package system, you only focus on that current state. And what I mean by that is you may get release notes on the current issues, you may see your old defects and where you are, but you're not really looking at a trending or known issues or where are you in the project. It's only at that point of time. Taking a system in is a very manual process. You have to bring it into your own environment. You have to do your customization. You have to make sure it's configured properly. The fact of the matter is, you may have gone with a vendor that maybe not as mature, have the highly QA pieces in place, so they have defects, they have their own scalability issues, and you're getting